It all started on what was supposed to be a peaceful Tuesday morning. The kind of morning where life feels predictable, safe, and quiet. The kind of morning you never expect to turn into a storm. 12-year-old Malik Carter sat by the airplane window, legs swinging gently, the hum of the engines filling the cabin. His oversized yellow hoodie almost swallowed his small frame, and his noise-canceling headphones played soft jazz, his mom's favorite music. Outside, the sun was just beginning to rise above the clouds, painting the sky gold. He clutched his black backpack tightly against his chest. It wasn't fancy, just a worn-out school bag with a tiny golden pin shaped like scales of justice. That pin was from his father, Supreme Court Justice Henry Carter. But what mattered more was what was inside the bag, a handwritten letter from his late mother, folded neatly in a small envelope. Malik had read it so many times he knew every curve of her handwriting by heart. He carried it everywhere, like a piece of her soul still whispering to him. The flight was heading from Atlanta to Washington, D.C. Malik was traveling alone, something he'd done before, always responsibly, always quietly. He was polite, well-spoken, the kind of kid every teacher loved. The passengers boarded slowly, the usual chatter filling the air, families finding seats, business travelers typing away on laptops, and a tired flight crew smiling through the motions. One of them was Ms. Wilkins, tall, blonde, and sharp-eyed, with a crisp uniform that screamed authority. When she first walked past Malik's row, she barely looked at him, until her gaze fell on the backpack. Her expression tightened. She hesitated, frowned, and then asked curtly, "Whose bag is this?" Malik looked up, startled but polite. "It's mine, ma'am." Her eyes lingered, scanning him from head to toe, then back to the bag. "You're traveling alone?" "Yes, ma'am." The tone she used next wasn't friendly. "We'll see about that." The older woman sitting beside Malik glanced up from her knitting and frowned. "He's just a boy, dear. Don't go starting something that isn't there." But Ms. Wilkins didn't respond. She walked away, her heels clicking down the aisle. And just like that, what began as an ordinary flight was about to turn into a headline no one on board would ever forget. The flight had settled into that quiet rhythm that comes right after takeoff. The hum of the engines steady, seatbelt signs blinking softly, passengers scrolling through phones or dozing off. Malik relaxed a little, pulling his hoodie tighter around him, feeling the weight of his mother's letter safe inside his backpack. He was halfway through a comic book when he saw Ms. Wilkins walking down the aisle again. Her posture was stiff, her eyes scanning each row like she was looking for something or someone. When her gaze locked on Malik, his stomach dropped. She stopped beside his seat, hands clasped in front of her. "Young man," she said, voice cold and professional, "we've received a report that an unaccompanied minor may be carrying an unverified personal item." Malik blinked, confused. "Unverified," he repeated softly. "Ma'am, it's just my backpack." Her expression didn't change. "I'm going to need to inspect it." The older woman beside Malik looked up sharply. "Inspect it? He's a child. You can't just—" Ms. Wilkins cut her off. "Ma'am, please remain seated. This is for security purposes." Passengers nearby started glancing over, sensing tension. The soft chatter faded, replaced by the quiet creak of leather seats and the low buzz of whispers. Malik's hands instinctively tightened around his backpack. "Please don't touch it," he said, his voice trembling just a little. "It has something important inside. Please." Ms. Wilkins crouched down slightly, her voice low but stern. "If you have nothing to hide, there's no problem, is there?" That sentence made Malik's throat tighten. He didn't know what to say. The way she looked at him, like she'd already decided he was guilty of something, made his chest ache. "I just want to keep my bag with me," he whispered. Her jaw clenched. "Sir, you need to comply. I'm not going to ask again." And before he could react, she reached down and tugged at the strap. Malik held on with both hands, his small fingers gripping tight. The struggle wasn't loud, but it drew eyes, row after row turning to look. The older woman beside him stood halfway up. "You let that boy be," she snapped. "He's done nothing wrong." Ms. Wilkins glared. "Ma'am, sit down before I call security." Malik's heart raced, his face burning with embarrassment. He wasn't sure which hurt more, the fear that she'd take his mother's letter, or the feeling that, no matter what he said, she wouldn't believe him. And in that moment, the calm of the cabin cracked, and the storm began. The tension inside that cabin felt electric, like the air had turned heavier, thicker, harder to breathe. Every whisper, every sideways glance burned into Malik's skin. He was just a kid sitting on an airplane, but the way Ms. Wilkins hovered over him made it feel like a courtroom. "Ma'am, please," he tried again, voice shaking. "There's nothing dangerous in there. I swear." But Ms. Wilkins wasn't listening. She had that look, the kind that says, "I've already decided who you are." She straightened her back, speaking into her intercom earpiece. "Captain, this is Wilkins. We may have a potential situation in row 14. The words potential situation hit like a thunderclap. Passengers turned. Some pulled out phones, pretending not to record. The old lady beside Malik shook her head in disbelief. "He's a child," she said louder this time. "What's wrong with you?" Ms. Wilkins ignored her. "Sir," she said firmly, turning to Malik, "I need you to hand me the bag, now." Malik looked down at his shoes, then slowly lifted the bag from under the seat. His voice cracked. "Can I at least take the letter out first?" That seemed to set her off. "I said now, young man." The bag slipped from his hands. Ms. Wilkins snatched it, stepping back as though she'd just confiscated a threat. She unzipped it in one quick motion, the sound slicing through the silence. The entire row stared as she pulled out the first thing her hand found. A folded envelope with the words, "My dearest Malik," written in a woman's delicate handwriting. Her fingers hesitated, just for a second. "What's this?" she asked, suspicious. Malik swallowed hard. "It's from my mom," he whispered. She passed away last year." Something flickered in her eyes. Guilt. Maybe, but she quickly masked it. "Still, protocol requires that I—" But before she could finish, the captain's voice cut through the intercom. "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been asked to remain seated for a brief security inspection." A collective sigh rippled through the cabin. Malik felt tears sting his eyes. He wanted to disappear, to vanish right into that seat. And then came the voice that changed everything. A flight officer stepped out from the cockpit and whispered something to Ms. Wilkins. Her face went pale. "The boy's father," the officer said quietly, "is Justice Henry Carter, of the Supreme Court." Ms. Wilkins froze. The color drained from her cheeks. Around her, murmurs spread like wildfire. For the first time since takeoff, she realized she hadn't just disrespected a passenger. She'd just humiliated the son of one of the most powerful judges in America. The landing gear touched down with a heavy thud, but the silence inside that cabin was louder than the engines. Nobody spoke. Even Ms. Wilkins, who had been full of control and authority minutes ago, now stood frozen at the front. Pale, stiff, hands shaking just slightly. When the plane rolled to a stop at the gate, Malik sat still, clutching his mother's letter against his chest. He didn't look at anyone. He just wanted to leave, to breathe again. The passengers around him whispered in disbelief, some looking guilty for not speaking up sooner. Then the cabin door opened. Standing outside, calm, composed, but radiating a quiet authority, was Judge Henry Carter. His presence filled the space before he even spoke. A tall man in a dark charcoal suit, eyes sharp but calm, voice deep enough to silence a room. "Good afternoon," he said evenly. "I believe my son is on this flight." The captain was the first to step forward. "Yes, sir. Young Malik is here." There was a misunderstanding. Judge Carter's eyes flicked briefly toward Ms. Wilkins. She swallowed hard, suddenly looking much smaller than before. "Misunderstanding," he repeated softly. "Is that what we're calling public humiliation now?" The captain stammered. "Sir, the attendant believed there was a security issue." Henry raised a hand, not in anger, but with that kind of calm that's far more intimidating than shouting. "You searched a child's belongings. You accused him without evidence. Tell me, Captain, was this standard procedure, or did you just assume my son was suspicious because of his skin color?" The captain opened his mouth, then closed it again. The silence spoke louder than any answer could. Henry turned to Ms. Wilkins, his tone steady but cutting. "You saw a boy, a respectful, quiet boy sitting in his seat. You didn't see danger, you decided to see it. That's the difference." Ms. Wilkins' lips trembled. "Sir, I didn't mean—" "You didn't think," he interrupted calmly. "That's the problem." He crouched beside Malik, his voice softening. "You okay, son?" Malik nodded quietly, eyes wet but proud. "I just wanted to keep Mom's letter safe." Henry placed a steady hand on his shoulder, then looked back up. "You'll be hearing from my office," he said simply. And with that, he took Malik's hand and walked off the plane. Every head turning, every phone recording, as the woman who thought she had authority realized she'd just crossed the wrong line. A week later, the story was everywhere, from morning news shows to social media headlines. Flight attendant Harris's Supreme Court Justice's son mid-flight. The clip from a passenger's phone had gone viral, showing Ms. Wilkins arguing with Malik, tugging at his backpack as the boy begged her not to touch it. The airline scrambled to control the damage. They issued a public apology, citing a breakdown in communication and judgment. But for many, it wasn't just about policy. It was about perception, bias, and the way one child's dignity had been stripped away in front of an audience of strangers. Ms. Wilkins sat at the disciplinary hearing with trembling hands. The HR officer read out the official complaint, line by line. Every detail was there: the words she used, her tone, her assumption. When the footage was played on a screen, she couldn't even look at it. Watching that small boy clutch his bag, eyes full of fear, it broke something in her. She realized, far too late, that she hadn't just violated a rule. She'd violated a person. Meanwhile, Malik was sitting outside the Supreme Court steps with his father. It was a cool, quiet afternoon, the marble glowing softly under the autumn sun. His black backpack rested beside him, the same golden pin glinting faintly in the light. He looked up at his father. "Dad, why did she treat me like that? I didn't do anything wrong." Judge Carter exhaled slowly, his gaze distant. "Sometimes, son, people see the world through fear, not truth. They let their bias decide what danger looks like." He paused, his voice soft but firm. "But you don't let their fear change who you are. You stay kind. You stay strong. That's how you rise above it." Malik nodded, holding the letter in his hands, his mother's words now worn and creased, but still powerful. "She said the same thing once," he whispered. "That people will show you who they are, but you still get to choose who you become." His father smiled faintly. "Your mother was a wise woman." Malik looked out toward the courthouse steps, eyes calm, voice steady. "I think she'd be proud of me." Henry nodded. "She would. And after what happened, I think the whole country knows your name now, son." Malik smiled softly. "Good. Maybe next time, someone will think twice." If you were in Malik's place, what would you have done? Let me know in the comments. And don't forget to subscribe for more powerful true stories like this one.